But we do start with Macomb County. Not everyone agrees that 911 should be used to report dangerous potholes, but County Executive Mark Hackel says it's a good way to fix some of the area's worst roads. He joins us now. Mark, it's good to see you back here on MiWeek.
Thanks, Christy. Thanks. And obviously, Steve and Nolan, thank you for having us.
Yeah, also our contributors here, Nolan Finley from the Detroit News and Stephen Henderson from the Detroit Free Press. All right, so Mark, we love that this is the second year in a row that you've done this dial 911 for potholes. People would not agree that that's the best usage of 911, but since you've rolled this out the last couple of weeks, what have the results been? What have you guys seen?
That's been the misperception. I think what happened is you had the state police got involved in this early on, and they don't receive 911 calls from anyone, and that was interesting. We do, and we have. We were receiving calls, 911, where people were damaging their vehicles and or there was a hazardous situation to deal with potholes. So people were calling 911 for that purpose, which is a proper thing to do. And so when they did, our road department came up with a solution and said and asked me as the executive responsible for roads, said, hey, listen, we can get out there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, within 1 hour if you will okay the overtime to do that, if there is a dangerous situation dealing with a pothole, and we get that call from one of those centers. And my response to them was absolutely. We are going to make sure that we keep those roads safe, and we relieve law enforcement of having to sit there or stand guard of a pothole so somebody else doesn't have that same problem. Well, in doing so, there was a perception that was given out that we are telling people to call 911 because there is a pothole. Very inappropriate. And how that got out through the media was not through our office. I mean, we were very specific on the fact that if a 911 center calls us on a pothole that has damaged a vehicle and probably will damage someone else's vehicle, we will get out there within 1 hour. I mean, we came up with a solution to help make sure that people aren't going to damage their vehicles and or put themselves in a hazardous situation. Someone else was getting out there saying it's inappropriate for you to tell people to call 911 when there's potholes. That is not what we did. And our solution has been working. We're working with the local municipalities. There wasn't one problem with our law enforcement agencies in Macomb County and or the sheriff of Macomb County and or our road department. So for somebody else to tell us what we should or shouldn't be doing with 911 in Macomb County, when we're out there trying to fix a problem that is beyond really the real concern here, and that's fixing roads, I was disappointed in that. I'm thinking if it works for us, we're going to continue to do it because it's about keeping people safe in Macomb County.
All right, so what have the results been in the last couple of weeks, and what kind of calls have you received, and what are the conditions right now?
It's interesting. I have yet to have a news story that's been up on TV talking about somebody who's been injured because of a pothole in Macomb County. Why? Because we're getting to that solution, and we've been able to address that, and we're dealing with it. So really, there hasn't been the problems in Macomb County. Are there potholes? Absolutely. There are problems. There's issues with the roads, but those damage-causing potholes have not caused any sensational news story because of the way we've been able to respond to it.
Well, speaking of roads, we all face a big question on May 5th about how to fix our roads here in Michigan. I'm wondering, I know you're a Proposal 1 supporter. Tell me why, but also tell me what you're hearing from people in Macomb County about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it failed from its inception, the proposal, but the reality is you got to get out there and try to get people to understand we need that funding. In Macomb County, by doing the whole pothole issue and drawing the attention to it, what we wanted to make sure is that people understood. Many people are upset with DPWs, the county road departments, and MDOT because they think it's their fault because they're not fixing roads, and that is so untrue. I think the reality is you've got a lot of road crews out there doing an incredible job of not only plowing the roads, trying to figure out the best way they can to fix roads, and deal with the issues in the summertime with cleaning the streets. They're doing an incredible job and have been, but they're severely under budget, meaning there's not enough money right now or funds to do what we need to do, and that's fix the infrastructure here in the state, in particular Southeast Michigan. So what we did is we realized, you know what, it's time to put that pressure on those that are responsible to come up with funding, however they want to do it. I'm not here to be prescriptive and telling them how to come up with that solution. That was their responsibility. The legislature in Lansing, it was their responsibility to figure out how do they fund this properly, and they knew it. So by doing that, we handed it off to the legislature. They accepted that responsibility, but I think they failed the public in this particular situation, and in particular road departments, by giving them a proper solution and putting it in the hands of the voters with a very complex proposal that people really don't understand. It's tie-barred to so many other issues that people are very distrusting of it, and rightfully so. So I don't know what the solution would be. That's not my responsibility to be prescriptive. There have been ideas from pothole or pot for potholes, racinos, to more funding.
But you're supporting Proposal 1.
I'm supporting it because I need the funding.
Yeah,
I mean, you're talking 20.
Sort of doesn't sound like it, right? I mean, you sound like everybody else saying, "Oh my gosh, this is an awful proposal." But
right, you know what? It's not the perfect solution. I think there probably could be other solutions, but again, it's going to cause, it's going to take some political fortitude for somebody to say we need to raise taxes and let's just do it.
Do you think,
or take money from someplace else to pay for it? That's their responsibility. That's what they got elected to do, is to be leaders in that area and make that decision.
Do you think it'll pass in Macomb County?
I do not think so, no.
No.
I don't think so.
What about
I think-
statewide?
No, I do not think so.
So they're a month out. What should they be doing to push this thing across the line? Is
Something
there
they sh-
anything they can do?
Yeah, something they should have been doing, I think, from day one. It's like any leader does not just say, here's our plan, and we don't have a backup plan or plan B. I don't care if it's a sports-related
Okay.
situation or team, whatever. You have to have a plan B in place, and you have to be talking about those opportunities that are out there. And unfortunately, there are some whispers, but nobody wants to talk about it because they think it may impact the vote coming up on May 5th. But the reality is they need to. If they have a plan B, bring it out there, let's talk about it so that, maybe if that is a better solution and people decide, I'm going to vote no because I like your plan B better, then that's okay too. There's no reason why they shouldn't be
What
talking
is
about
a
plan B.
legitimate plan B, Mark?
I don't know that there's going to be any way of getting around it, but to figure out how do we raise taxes, whether it's a millage. I've often thought about it. In fact, it's interesting, Nolan, when they talked about this being the 11th hour solution, Proposal 1, I thought about that and I'm thinking, boy, had I known that, I would have talked to the regional leaders, maybe in Southeast Michigan or an 8-county region, and saying, listen, I got a better idea. If they're going to be doing that, they're going to raise taxes somehow through some kind of a sales tax. How about we just look at it as more of a millage or some kind of a sales tax on gas just in Southeast Michigan so that we can capture all that money? This plan, this proposal that they're talking about, doesn't allow us to keep all that money. There's still Act 51 that comes into play where a lot of that money is still sent north of Macomb County, and others are benefiting more so than what they're getting out of it. So is there a way that we could capture all that and with that solution provide a solution for regional transit? So if we decided to do something, whether it's a millage in the Tri-County area, and I'm talking to my partners, my regional partners, to figure out is there a solution that we can come up with aside from what Lansing keeps talking about that may cause for some kind of an increase in revenue somehow, but yet we capture all that and people know it's going to go directly to roads, nowhere else. I think people will be more receptive to knowing that, if we know it's going to go to the roads and that regional transit plan, then maybe we'll be more receptive to that. That's, I think, the direction we need to go, but I want to talk further with my regional partners as we move forward here.
All right, so what have you been talking to your regional partners about in terms of transit in the area?
This issue. I think that's one of the conversations we had was Proposal 1. What do we do? And I think every one of them, from what I've understood and read and had conversations with them, is reluctantly supporting it. I think Brooks has signed up that he's supporting the proposal. So has Warren, and I know Mike has too. But the reality is, I think I don't want to speak for them, but I think they have that same thought that this probably isn't going to pass. And what do we do? So we have sat down and had some discussions as to what do we think we could do if there is a possibility of having a plan B, that they're not going to come up with, they being Lansing and our legislators, and how do we get the public to realize, we do care about the infrastructure needs.
Mark,
There's something moving forward.
you're very close to having to go to the voters and ask for funding for the Rapid Transit Authority, for
Correct.
the RTA. You're asking voters for a lot all in a little bit of time.
Correct, and this was very I think damaging to the regional transit solution for funding this proposal, and that's why I say if I'd have known that I would have tried to corral the regional leaders and saying, hang on a second, if this is
Fund it
what
all
they're
at
talking about,
one shot?
And making sure people understood that money was going to go specifically to roads and regional transit. Again, I haven't done the numbers, but we talked about that, and I think there is a tremendous possibility or potential here of getting people to trust that that money is going to go to roads and regional transit. It would have been a much less costly, proposal, if you will, than what Proposal 1 is, and we're not being a donor county or a donor region. I think there is something there, and we're going to be discussing it or having some talks. I'm going to at least encourage that.
Some of the other regional conversation you've been having is surrounding the water department in Detroit. Where are we right now with that?
It's a challenge. I say that for this reason. I think a lot of assumptions that were given. There wasn't a lot of information as we were sitting at the table trying to figure out, where do we go with this, and that memorandum of understanding. There were a lot of issues that I was concerned with, and I still am. Are the savings coming out of the system, or are the savings going to be an increase in rates? And that is going to be the biggest, holdout during this process. And even during these discussions, although there's this, so-called gag order out there, I cannot continue to just be silent if there are problems or issues that we're seeing. And one of the things that was coming out is, raises for a lot of the people, that 10% being, reinstated for the employees, and beyond that, pay raises. Talking about trying to figure out whether the director of the water system is going to get a pay raise. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, how does all this come in when there's a Great Lakes Water Authority that's supposed to be making these decisions right now, yet in the interim, all these deals are being cut and people are talking about that while this process is taking place. Inappropriate at best.
Do you think you can maintain the system that we have fix it and prevent it from getting back into the shape that it's in without raising rates?
Steve, my biggest concern from the onset was they were trying to give an impression that here we're going to give $50 million a year to the city of Detroit to lease the system. Okay, the privilege of leasing the system. Let's call it what it is. We're trying to figure out how do we pay in our rates more to help Detroit fix their infrastructure needs. Let's be honest about it. I mean, I think that's what should have happened from day one. That didn't happen from day one. What happened was, let's give an impression that, you know what, we're going to benefit by having a seat at the table, which still we don't have. You know, we're again, do we have an opportunity to hold off on something by, you know, being that one vote or grabbing somebody from Oakland County to help us with it? Yeah, but still the benefit of this and the actual authority itself is still to City of Detroit and Wayne County. And the funding issue, boy, I tell you, I'd like $50 million a year coming to Macomb County to help us with our infrastructure needs, because that $50 million is going to help them with their needs, but we still have to fix our infrastructure issues aside from that.
Well,
so rates are going to go up.
Right, I was going to say, but that's where the rates increase comes from, is local water authorities that
Correct.
are going to have to
And
fix
people
their
are going
own.
to think that that's because your local municipality raised your rates, and that's not true. And that's what I think was left out of this discussion early on, was the local municipalities who actually buy the water from the city of Detroit, not the county. Wayne County doesn't, Oakland County doesn't, Macomb County doesn't.
Right.
Where they buy it at the local level, they need to be engaged in these conversations, so they knew up front what was going to be happening and explaining to people why this was going to happen, as opposed to saying, well, the Great Lakes Water Authority is in place right now. Don't worry about that $50 million to the city of Detroit. Your rates will not go up more than 4%. And
Well,
we're hearing that's not true already.
Well,
So, I
is
mean,
it possible to keep rates at 4%? I mean,
I don't
that
know
was
yet.
the
That's-
implication when the MOU was signed. Well, this will cap your rates at 4%. Now we're hearing, well, we didn't really mean cap the
Correct.
rates. We meant, I don't know what the heck they meant, but it
Capping
was
the rate.
11% this year.
You're absolutely right. I mean, that's the complexity of the issue. That's what we're dealing with moving forward. Can that be true? I mean, are we going to be able to sustain that? And is that going to be something that, when they said it to the public, that we can own up to? Is that 4%? I said it from the moment they put that out there in an MOU. That is not true. 4% is not going to be. That's not a true figure. And can we get to it? Looking at the numbers and what is finally given to us, what is given to us, because we're still looking for some answers that we're not getting from the books, is not adding up. I'm telling you, it's still much of a challenge. I want to be regional. I said it before they even got into this, forcing us into a mediation. Forced mediation. I said it when Mike Duggan was there, Bob Ficano, and Brooks Patterson. We had a panel of 4 of us sitting there. I said, you know what, we need to talk about regionalizing the water authority outside of bankruptcy. Let's sit down and discuss this, and everyone agreed. But then all of a sudden I get this call, you're being forced into mediation on an authority to create it, and by the way, you can't talk about it. Well, that was suspect from day one. If I can't talk about it, we can't discuss a regional process. We didn't do that with Coble. We're not doing it with the Detroit Arts. We didn't do it with the zoo. We didn't do it with regional transit. It was all open dialogue discussion. We may have had differences of opinion, but that's how you get to a better solution, and one that the public will trust the outcome of, as opposed to what we're dealing with right now.
A couple of weeks ago, a report came out talking about some population shifts, and from year to year, Macomb County, you had a little uptick in population, more people moving to Macomb County. Anything that you would attribute that to?
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate. I hate to see that shifting of population within the region. You'd rather see it coming from people wanting to live here, you know. And again, it's disappointing. I mean, it's a loss to the city of Detroit and Wayne County. It's our gain, but that's not what I want to see. I would rather see that shifting of population come from other regions throughout the country to the Detroit area. And I think that day will come. I think there's a lot of good things happening with economic development and opportunities, especially in automotive, that are going to help bring that back. The biggest challenge is going to be for the city of Detroit and their neighborhoods, and that's going to be a Mike Duggan and city council issue. You know, moving forward, how do they provide the services to a very wide area, that is much less populated than it once was. The downtown area, incredible opportunities, for the entire region. I mean, it's great to see, but we got to start figuring out how they repopulate those neighborhoods or do something different with it. And again, that's as I mentioned, Mike Duggan's concern, and we're here to try to figure out how do we support that as well as we can.
All right, Mark Hackel, Macomb County Executive, thanks so much for coming in. It's always
Thank you.
good to see you. Make sure you come back and see us, and we'll see you up at Mackinac, right?
You bet, absolutely. Looking forward to that.
All right, perfect. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you. Thanks, guys.